A UN-backed no-fly zone over Libya, but China has said Libya's sovereignty must be respected, suggesting it would veto a resolution. OK, well, let's get a legal opinion on Gaddafi's prospects. Joining us from London is Mark Ellis, Executive Director of the International Bar Association. Good to have you with us. Clearly, there's some negotiations taking place about whether Gaddafi might step down. If he's looking for immunity from prosecution for human rights abuses, can that be guaranteed if the International Criminal Court is now involved?
I would say no, it cannot be. Once the UN Security Council referred this case to the International Criminal Court, that case then becomes the jurisdiction of the ICC. And so it is now up to the ICC, an independent, non-political body, to investigate, as the prosecutors indicated he is doing. And then if he decides that there's sufficient basis to believe these atrocities are committed, he'll pursue an indictment. And that will be outside of any political negotiations on whether Gaddafi will be given impunity. So I would say for right now, it is absolutely the ICC's decision on whether or not this case is going to go forward, and it's not going to be decided by any political players as to impunity.
Is Libya able to ask for a deferment of an indictment under the provisions of the Rome Statute?
Yes, I think that's a very good point. There is a provision within the Rome Statute that, of course, authorizes the International Criminal Court under Article 16 for the UN Security Council, the same Security Council that referred the case to the ICC. That Security Council could also ask for a deferral for up to a year for any continuing investigation of Mr. Gaddafi or anybody else. And so it is possible to, in essence, put this case at abeyance for at least a year. And that provision is there, I think, for exactly these types of scenarios, that this UN Security Council may decide that there needs to be sufficient additional time to provide some type of security to ensure that there's peace and security in the region. And that would be the only legal option, in my opinion, where you could see some type of again, deferral of this case from the ICC. But that, I think, would be the only approach that one could take. And it would require the Security Council to have a majority vote, and there could be no vetoes by any of the 5 permanent members to make that deferral happen. It's
very difficult, isn't it? Because, I mean, you know, the ICC was set up so that the populations could get redress against terrible, terrible cases of war crimes and crimes against humanity. But there do seem to be situations like this one where the ICC could become an impediment to the resolution of a very bloody conflict.
Yeah, it is it's probably the most challenging aspect of this peace versus justice argument. Is it appropriate to do whatever you need to do in order to move out from the country, in this case Libya, the person who's responsible for these atrocities, in order to stop these atrocities? Or are you essentially saying, well, international justice plays a back row seat, and that you're in essence allowing a perpetrator, an alleged perpetrator of these crimes, to dictate the negotiation parameters on whether or not he's going to get impunity or not. So it's a difficult scenario. I think the UN Security Council would be, I think, somewhat reluctant, having just referred the case to the ICC, to automatically turn around now within a short period of time and seek a deferment. In essence, the message would probably now have to be, it is in the hands of the ICC. That is a separate legal process from any political negotiations, and the potential indictment stands if that's the decision that the ICC makes.
Mark, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for that. Mark Ellis speaking to us from London.
You're welcome.
Now, hundreds of people have taken to the streets of Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire. Some were protesting against the killing of 6 women shot by soldiers at a march last week. Other people were demonstrating against incumbent leader Laurent Gbagbo. Mohamed Ado is in Abidjan, has more on the violence plaguing Côte d'Ivoire. Mohamed, it just seems to be getting worse and worse. Do people feel that the country's falling into civil war? And clearly, we lost Mohamed Ado there. We'll try and get him back a little later on the situation on Côte d'Ivoire there. In Pakistan, police have arrested a man over a bomb blast that's killed at least 25 people. The explosion in the eastern city of Faisalabad happened at a gas station in a neighborhood full of government buildings. About 100 people were injured. Officials say the man may also have been involved in a 2009 attack on a Sri Lankan cricket team. Kamal Haider has more from Islamabad.
A deadly attack at a gas station, this time, of course, with new tactics. The explosive-laden vehicle was parked inside that gas filling station. At the time of the blast, the man is said to have left his vehicle and then detonated his device by remote control. According to the security forces, at least 25 people were killed and over 100 wounded. A number of buildings close to that filling station were also destroyed. Rescue efforts were underway to try and dig out both the dead and possibly people who may have been trapped under the debris. The security forces also saying that they have claimed a major breakthrough by arresting a man whom they believe was responsible for the attack. He's also been implicated in the attack on the Sri Lankan team in the city of Lahore earlier.
Police in Scotland say they've arrested a 30-year-old man in connection with a suicide bombing in Sweden. Taimur Abdul Wahab, a Swedish national of Middle Eastern descent, was killed in December when his bomb went off prematurely. Police believe he'd intended to attack a train station or department store in central Stockholm. Italian police have arrested more than 30 suspects after a crackdown on a crime syndicate. Officials say more suspects are being sought in Germany, Canada and Australia. In the small Calabrian town of Palizzi, police surrounded the home of suspected mafia boss Francesco Mesano. The organisation is one of the world's biggest cocaine traffickers. A Paris judge has delayed one part of the corruption trial of former French President Jacques Chirac. The charges date back to his time as mayor of the city. Prosecutors claim Chirac conjured up fake jobs to pay his supporters. The judge is yet to decide whether the second part of the trial will be allowed to continue as scheduled. Well, we can go back to our Côte d'Ivoire story there and protests in the city of Abidjan. Mohamed Ado is there and has more on the violence plaguing Côte d'Ivoire. Mohamed, the violence seems to be getting worse. There's a huge refugee crisis and the dispute between the two men claiming to be president hasn't been resolved. How bad is it in Côte d'Ivoire?
Well, surely the problems are getting bigger here in Ivory Coast, and the concern at the moment is that there could be a possibility of a reignition of civil war here because both sides continue to dig in and there seems to be little hope for a compromise from either sides. Most of the demonstrations that happened today in Abidjan were happening in the suburb of Abobo, where the